Well, Joe and I decided, hey, coming into 2025, we don't want to do the same stupid story over and blah, 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 oh, this guy, that, this guy, that, homeless, and this person gets shot and stuff. It's like I'm trying to get solution-oriented. It's not easy to find it. You got to get like 10 Google searches down to find somebody who wants to be solution-oriented. So I was talking to my buddy, Brandy Cruz, and Nicole Thompson over there, and I was talking about judges running unopposed. In the state of Washington, King County, Pierce County, judges run unopposed, and they just keep winning and winning and winning. And we were talking to various folks that are in the world of crime and stopping crime. And they said the biggest problem is cops catch them, then they go before the judge, and then the judge goes, well, you had a tough childhood and your mom didn't breastfeed you, and go back out in the street and, don't sin no more. So I saw this fullcourtpress.org, and I thought, let's get Tim on there, Tim Kovis, who is got a really great group of people you're working with. You got Rob McKenna on there and a bunch of other people that I know and I appreciate their work. So Tim, what will Full Court Press do, hopefully, like say, I don't know, 10 years from now? How do you hope that the environment looks when it comes to the courtroom? Who is wearing the black robe of just justice being blind and the laws being followed and the defendants being treated fairly? What do you hope in 10 years from now?
Yeah, thanks, John, for having me on. Yeah, in 10 years, we're hoping to develop an organization that can really help good judicial candidates understand how to run for judge.
Yeah.
So many of these positions, as you mentioned, go unopposed, and we know there's good people out there that want to run, but they just don't know where to start and where to get help from. So we're looking to be that conduit to help those folks understand the basics of campaigning and how to win.
If you talk to Rob McKenna, he'll tell you the willing aren't able and the able aren't willing. He often talks about that as to who wants to run and who wants to be in there. So what stops a judge or a lawyer from saying, yeah, okay, I will run? Is it just simply, is it complete inexperience? They can't raise the money. They don't get the support. They get, bombarded in the media as being, right wing or something. How do you sort of step them through the process and take them all the way up to having their name on the ballot?
Yeah, it's kind of all of the above in all reality. Running for office is not a very instinctual thing to do. Mm-hmm. And in partisan election, for the legislature, they have campaign committees that help their candidates out and get them to understand what to do. And in judicial races, they're just different enough. And, you have to be a lawyer and you have to be willing, if it's an incumbent judge, you have to be willing to put your name down.
Right.
And there's a stigma that comes with that. And at some point,
wait. What's the stigma, Tim?
Well, if you're not successful, you may have to go before them.
Okay.
And that can be problematic. I understand that. You have a lot to risk.
Yes.
By putting your name down. But we've seen over the past number of years, both at all levels from trial court to the state Supreme Court, we've seen some very questionable at best decisions, be it letting violent individuals out on no bail or very little bail, up to the Supreme Court where they rewrite the law and you read the decision and it's more political rhetoric than decisions based in the actual law.
Yeah. There are plenty of these judges. It's interesting when you read like a piece in the Seattle Times, they won't name the judge. Often they don't tell you the name of the judge when they make particular rulings, letting somebody go, putting somebody on electronic monitor, or when they comes back, the guy was released and then 6 weeks later he stabbed somebody to death. The judge's name is not often in there. I guess for some reason, but to me, they seem as important in the story as any other person's name that may be in that story. Here's one particular judge in particular that Rance has been sort of following. This is Judge Galvin, Galvan. This is Rance is going to read from a Facebook page. This is from 2017. I don't know if the judge still feels this way, but it goes like this.
What does resistance look like when you wear a black robe? I recognize that the institution I work for never expected me to occupy this space, but I shall occupy it by acknowledging my privilege and recognizing the institution I love has been complicit in perpetuating oppression.
Okay, so this is a judge wearing the black robe and then wanting basically to make sure the ideology that she's bringing before the court is respected in part of the decision. I won't tell you the name of the guy off the air. I will. He attended, I think it was probably 3 years ago, a big thing in Spokane. All the judges were there, the defense attorneys and the prosecutors were all there for this big thing. And at one point, one of the judges got up and said, I think it's really important that we take in the race of the defendant before we sentence. And a friend of mine, who will remain nameless, said he was shocked to see it started with a smattering of applause until finally it was not quite a standing ovation, but everybody seemed to be in on that idea. And I think that goes directly against the 14th Amendment. It goes against how we are supposed to have our criminal justice system work. Most of these judges that run unopposed, as you know, Tim, feel as if they have complete control up there, and whatever their ideology is, it's part of the sentencing and how they rule in these cases. You have quite a task ahead of you to try to switch this balance back again.
Yeah, no, I am very familiar with that quote, and I think that really hits the nail on the head. You know, our organization, Full Court Press, is not looking to recruit a bunch of folks that are going to be activists where I agree. We want judges that are going to apply the rule of law on the case before them. And finding those folks, we know they're out there. We know there's folks that feel there's too much activism in all levels of our court system. And we want to find those folks that want to have this change and bring back, you know, the blind justice of the law and have judge rule inside of the law rather than making it.
Mm-hmm. At this point, with fullcourtpress.org, Tim, how many lawyers have you gotten to say, well, okay, I'll step up if you help me? Are you starting to build the bench?
Yeah, you know, we started about a year ago.
Okay.
I was hired, or I started the first part of April 1st. So that's not the most ideal time to start an organization like this, but you kind of have to rip off the bandage and just do it. But last cycle, to kind of put it into context, the only judicial positions that were up were all of the Superior Court judges throughout the state, and then we had 3 state Supreme Court positions and some appellate court. Mm-hmm. So there were about 213 positions up. Not shocking. 197 of them were unopposed, including 2 Supreme Court positions and 8 Court of Appellate spots. So that kind of just tells you what the problem is.
Right.
And in those 16 contested races, we were working with 6 judicial candidates.
The challenge will not only be to get people that will wear the robe and will not bring ideology in, but will simply be able to call the balls and strikes on this thing, will also be the battle that you have with the Washington State Supreme Court, referring to the ruling regarding when litigants claim racial bias affecting the trial verdict. Justice Rachel Montoya Lewis wrote in a unanimous opinion that the opposing party must prove how it did not demonstrate that nothing said at the trial played to the jury's unconscious bias. I read Alito's description of this as bat crazy, in that all you have to do, you got to prove a negative and say that the words that were being used in court did not affect the bias, the unconscious bias of the jury. This That particular ruling of Washington State Supreme Court throws all cases back up in the air again. So you will have a big task to get the people in there behind the bench that we feel are fair. And then also you'll be battling this idea that the entire system is systemically racist, and you can just describe the defendant as and use a particular word, and then all of a sudden that word can be extrapolated out to, well, that created bias in the jury, so therefore we throw the whole case out and start all over again. You're aware of these cases, right?
Yeah, and it's good to see Judge Dave Larson,
Yes,
who ran for the open seat at the Supreme Court level, kind of was really the model of the kind of judge that we're looking for, that's trying to put the traditional judicial philosophy of not having bias or a political ideology to be used in court cases. So I know there are folks out there that are as frustrated as you and I and others in the legal community, and we're going to spend the next probably the rest of my career finding them and supporting them and having them understand what are the nuts and bolts to win these elections and give them that support system.
So the 85% of the time, the incumbent wins. And of course, the incumbent will win 100% of the time if they don't have anybody in there running against them. So that is part of the problem. And then also mixed in there, you might be able to speak to this, is the defense attorneys will get on and give 5 stars to these judges because they like these judges because they like the way these judges rule. So there's a big support, lots of money, lots of publicity from the defense attorney side. But from the prosecutor side, you don't get that same support.
Yeah, and that's the key will be to find and get good judges elected at all levels, down to district court and the superior court. I mentioned Judge Larson. He's a district court judge down in Federal Way and had the track record of being a fair judge who did not bring ideology into his courtroom. And unfortunately, he lost a very close,
Yep.
Election there at the end, and it shows. I think that folks are willing to look at candidates with an open mind. Judicial races are probably the toughest. In my 20 years of being around politics in this state, every election, friends, families always ask me, "Well, who do I vote for? I don't want to vote for the wrong person."
Right.
So hopefully we can also help educate the public on who we're working with, so they have a point of reference.
Yeah, because the problem is that you go, at that point, it's called down ballot fatigue. Mm-hmm. So you vote at the top, and then you get down to the bottom, and then you're like, well, there's the judge, and you're like, well, I don't know. And then if there's nobody running against, really either just leave it blank, which is basically a vote for that judge, or write in Mickey Mouse, which I think Mickey Mouse scored pretty highly in some of the King County races. So, listen, I applaud you. I appreciate this. There has to be an opposing force, right? The basic laws of physics, to create the balance, we need people pushing from the other side. We don't want some crazy person up there that brings their own bias that causes the defendant to not get the fair trial that they deserve. But at the same time, we need to make sure that judges like Veronica Galvin, who say things like crime persists despite locking people up.
We've detained people for years. And crime is still here. Children are still committing inappropriate things. We still have behaviors that are concerning. This is going to take a lot more than just throwing people in and locking them up without a key.
So she doesn't just throw them in and lock them up with a key. So, well, listen, keep up the good work. I know you sound somewhat hesitant with the gigantic job that is upon you and your shoulders, but Tim Kovis, thank you very much for speaking to us about fullcourtpress.org. You got good people behind you. Hopefully we can see some progress in making sure that justice is served for all. Thanks, Tim. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, John.
Okay.